Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over a Brew, let me tell you about my friends at Roberts Motors. You know, one of our favorite episodes here on the show was when we had a chance to sit down with Sam and John Roberts. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, go back and take a look at it. It's great to see the interaction between not only two business partners, but of course father and son as well. They really epitomize what a local business is all about. Number one, doing business the right way, giving back to the community. If you have a chance, you may not buy a car from there, but at least give them the opportunity. Shop robertsmotors.com. You get more at Roberts Motors Ford. More selection, more value. Each vehicle they sell comes with the Roberts Rewards Value Package, which includes oil changes for 2 years, loaner cars, car washes, and much more. Get more at Roberts Motors Ford. Check them out at robertsmotors.com. Now enjoy this week's episode of Business Over a Brew. Welcome to Business Over a Brew, the show where we talk business with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business leaders, all while enjoying a nice brew from the Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier Hotel in Alton. Today we'll talk to Barbie and Bryan Brynildsen. They'll tell us how a home furnishing store turned into not one, but two of the Riverbend's premier event centers, and how the rest of the family has been bit by the entrepreneurial bug as well. So let's get to it. It's the Business Over a Brew podcast from the Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier Hotel in Alton. Welcome to Business Over a Brew. I'm your host, Nick Darr. Pleased to be joined on this episode by, I'm calling them the first family of local business in Alton because they've got so many of them. But Barbie and Bryan Brynildsen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming on Business Over a Brew.
Nick. Thank you for having us.
It really is a family affair for you guys. Just tell us a little bit about the family, first of all.
You want to take that?
No. You
want me to? Okay. So, well, we have 5 sons. We've been kind of sitting here talking a little bit about that. Our oldest, gosh, I probably shouldn't go over their ages because I won't remember them. But
Right, yeah.
Born in 85.
Born in 85. There we go. And then Ben, our youngest, was born in 94. Thank you very much.
So basically a 10-year gap.
Yeah. So
It's like clockwork every 2 years.
Well,
right?
the first 3 were every 2 years, and the last 2 were every 3 years.
Okay.
yeah, we got a little smarter.
slowed
at that time.
down.
We had
Yeah.
a little distance in between, but we had built-in babysitters and
Oh, yeah.
diaper changers and all that. So yeah.
Nice to have older kids to help out.
Exactly.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
I have 4 myself, and I always say if the oldest one had just been a girl, though, I'd have really had a built-in babysitter because she's a little more trustworthy than my oldest son with leaving the younger ones with him. So, well, tell us a little bit about this business story you guys have. You have the WOW Event Center, and then now WOW on Broadway. How did all that get started?
Well, how it all started was basically, we were always busy raising the kids, so we had some hobbies and things like that, but it wasn't until they got a little bit older that I started going to auctions, redoing furniture, things like that. And when our house became full of furniture, the garage became full of furniture, and a storage unit that we rented was full of furniture, we thought it's time to open up a shop. So
Yeah, when you can hardly get through your kitchen, your dining room.
it wasn't that bad.
It was pretty bad.
Anyway, so that's when we opened up WOW Furnishings, and that was almost 5 years ago. And that was in 2015. So around 2016, our 4th son was getting married, and they actually had the reception in Alton. So we did the rehearsal dinner at our furniture store in the back, because in the back space, well, you've been back there, it has the brick, just the cool Edison lights hanging, a great view of the bridge. So we were like, well, let's have it back in there. And at that time, we were right in the process of expanding to where we are now on the other side of the wall. So at that time, the rehearsal dinner was a big hit. Everybody liked it, so it kind of confirmed what we were doing. Can you say?
That's true.
So then that was 2016. So then we expanded, started doing more smaller parties, but then started doing receptions. People said, well, how about, can we have a wedding here? So we were like, well, okay. So we figured that all out, and then, gosh, the rest is history with that, right?
Right.
So
What had you done before opening up?
So he has always been self-employed. I worked for American Water here in Alton.
Okay.
At their customer service center, was the manager of their training department. So I was kind of the corporate America person, and he was
more the entrepreneur, small
entrepreneurial.
business.
Yeah.
So tell us about finding the location, first of all, because it's a really cool building.
I don't know which location. Do you mean the one at 515 East 3rd?
Yeah, let's start with that
our
one,
WOW,
right, yeah.
WOW Event Center. Well, actually, it was pretty interesting because Penny Schmidt, which you probably
Mm-hmm.
know, she led us to the location. Well, led Barbie to the location, and I'm thinking, what? What kind of place is this?
Right.
Denny Scarborough owns the building. And anyway, after Barbie showed me, we go back, and it was only on one part of that building. But as we got to the back, that was the storage area, which Barbie has already explained to you. And so it kind of grew from that point. But that location, I guess you can say, if it wasn't for Penny Schmidt, we probably wouldn't have gotten to that building. You think that's true, Barbie?
No, absolutely, yeah. Because we had met her, her YMCA building was for sale,
Right.
so we met her on a cold, January morning, and that building was an awesome building, but just way over our heads for what our experience was.
Right.
And so we kind of stayed in touch, and then she's like, hey, I've got this building that you need to look at for renting. And that was the front part of the building where our bridal suites are now, and we could see in the back it had a glass door so you could see through, we could see the brick and all this. And so we said, well, what is that? And he said, well, that's really not for rent unless you'd have to rent all of it. We were like, well, that's fine, because he was just using it for storage, so there was no heat or air or anything like that. So we put all that in, but it's turned out to be a really nice space.
It's an incredible space. Obviously, it started off the furnishing side of things. Where are you still doing that a little bit? Or
We
is
are
that-
still doing some custom orders for people. We do want to get to that when we get back to that part when we have a little bit more room when we expand in the building to be able to do that again, because that's something that I really enjoy doing. It's probably not the most profitable, but I really enjoy doing that part of it.
Right.
And then we also had consigners with us. We had some, stay-at-home moms that were doing that to supplement their income. So we really want to get back to doing that to help that side of it as well.
Sure. So that was roughly 5 years ago. Talk to us about the Wow on Broadway location. How did that come about?
So that kind of came about because at the beginning, up at 515 East 3rd, we were doing some showers on Sundays. Well, then there was more of a demand for weddings on Sundays. So that's when we got involved with the Wow on Broadway. We had met Jane
Right.
Kelly. She showed us the building. She probably showed it to us about a year before we actually ended up buying it.
Right. We were looking at more at, I guess, the old pawn shop, which is now Luciana's.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at that location. We looked actually at the Wedge Bank. So we were looking around for different places, and we just kind of out of a second thought, we just say, Janine, show us, what used to be the Talbot Law Firm. And so sure enough, she showed us, and we walk in there, and there's, I don't know, well, you've been in there. So
Yeah.
there's the one room that really is outstanding with the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at that, and we each looked at each other and said, wow, this is pretty
Wow
interesting.
building.
And so that was a year prior. So then eventually we actually did go back to that and started it there, purchased the building, and kind of went from there.
So it was kind of a moment where it was like, this is great, this is perfect, but it did take a while, obviously, before you decided to take the plunge and open the second
Yeah.
location. So.
Yeah, because then we first started doing, the upstairs wasn't finished yet. So for the first year, we were just doing showers and parties on the weekends on the main floor. And then this last August is when we finished up the upstairs and turned it into the boutique hotel section of it.
And how have people been utilizing that?
Mainly right now, Ken been working mostly with our wedding parties where they do like a Friday check-in at 3 o'clock. They can do their rehearsal there, their rehearsal dinner, spend the night, get up. There's a beautiful bridal suite so they can get ready there. It sleeps 16 people, so a lot of their families or wedding parties stay there. And then they come up the street, have their wedding reception with us, and then go back down the street to have their after party. Because, the party just doesn't end with the reception these days, not
No,
like years
sure.
ago. There's an after party.
No, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
so-
either going to be Fast Eddie's or somewhere else.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so they'll go down to the Wow on Broadway location, and then they can even in the next morning, if they're up to it, they can even do like a brunch or a gift opening or whatever. So there's a lot of opportunities on the event side for bridal situations. So.
So Barbie, you came from the corporate side, Bryan more the entrepreneurial side. Has there been a moment where you can think, I really had to convince her about that, or I had to convince him, or has it been pretty?
Well, it's kind of an ongoing
Harmonious.
thing.
Yeah, see, he's the entrepreneurial side, so he's always like 5 miles ahead of me, thinking of the next thing, and I'm pulling back the reins to say, let's get this one finished first. But I'm glad that he does that because he's got the big vision of
Right.
things where I can kind of I need to get finished with one thing first before my mentally can shift to another thing. So it's a good balance.
I think so.
It's funny, we had Todd Kennedy
Sure.
from Eastgate
Oh, yeah.
Plaza on, and you guys are
Absolutely.
familiar with that, obviously. And I asked him pretty much the same question. It's like, no, actually, there isn't a give and take with us. It's kind of dangerous because I'll float an idea, and then she's like, yeah, you should do that. So maybe it's good to have a little bit of, hey, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah,
Let's
sometimes
back up a bit.
it makes it interesting. That's
Right.
for sure.
Talk about the kids and their involvement in business. So you got 5 boys, and obviously active in the business community in the area. Talk a little bit about those
Yeah.
ventures as well.
Okay. Well, let's see. Jared is our oldest one. Him and his wife Carolyn. They are active duty military. He's in the Army. She's in the Air Force. They're now stationed in.
She did pick
San
the better
Antonio,
service, by the way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
because he's, can you tell, former Air Force.
Well, I've seen some tip jars at Germania that reflect, pick the service that you like
Right,
best. So,
right. So I think they opened Germania in 2016, because they eventually want to, I think, get back into this area and invest. They're investing into the community.
Where'd you say they were stationed now?
Now they're in San Antonio.
Okay, because they had been out in
They were in Hawaii before.
Right,
Great
right.
place to go.
Yeah, really.
Vacation was fantastic. But
San Antonio's not bad, I guess.
No, I don't
oh
think
yeah,
it
we
is.
haven't been there yet. We're supposed to get there in March. But so Jared and Carolyn are, and well now Ben, who's our youngest, manages it for him. So
So we always tell
Same thing
everybody
with
that
that.
our oldest owns it and our youngest runs it.
Right.
So from that perspective in Germania now, there are future plans, and I'll just leave it at that. We're kind of sworn to secrecy as
Oh.
to what they're going to do, but it should be very, very interesting if they follow through with what they're thinking about. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, and so far, you guys, the 4 locations that I can think of, some very cool concepts with the WOW Event Center, WOW on Broadway, Germania, and then most recently, I guess, Riverbend Axe Throwing.
yeah, so that's our second oldest son, Daniel, and his wife Erica, and they have 4 kids. And I know that when we went on vacation a few years ago, they had went to a couple axe throwing places and then visited some in St. Louis. And I think always interested because raising the kids, they always had paper routes. They always had some type of business because we wanted them to kind of learn that side of it and
Right.
understand too. If they wanted to have money to spend, well, guess what? You got to earn it. So,
Right.
so I think a lot of that came from that as well too. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, I think so for sure.
Yeah. So they've opened that. It's going really well. It's a great atmosphere down there.
And one thing to be said is they really did it right. I haven't been to. Well, I've only been to a couple other axe throwing places, but from what I've heard from others, is some of them are just barely legit. They're not as safe as probably they should be.
It's a guy out back in his shed. Or
Right,
something. Yeah.
right. And Daniel and his wife Erica, they both had been to a lot of different places, and so they really knew what they wanted to do, and so they really turned that location with Todd's help over there. It's a really sensational place. Just the whole look of it, just the level that they've taken it to.
I think in some respects you guys would say you've been fortunate, but also have been driving force behind just, you take Eastgate, for example. It's really become kind of a really an entertainment
That's
destination.
amazing, yeah.
awesome place down there.
And Broadway and the downtown Alton area has really undergone somewhat of a renaissance as well, and you guys have been fortunate to maybe take advantage of that as well. So.
Yeah, I think with WOW Furnishings, at least it was interesting to see with WOW Furnishings, we were able to actually draw people from outside the community there. Barbie's done a great job on Facebook with the advertising and marketing and things of that nature.
Right.
And so we were able to actually draw a lot of people from outside the community, so at least kind of see what's going on in Alton. Same thing with the event center. We've been very fortunate in that way too, to draw people outside the community as well as those inside the community, but those outside the community to kind of see what Alton has to offer.
Absolutely.
The new revised Alton, so to speak.
Yeah.
Exciting
Right.
time.
Because they're very unique spaces.
Right.
Something you probably don't find within a pretty large area. I would say.
Right, and that's what we always mentioned. It's just the older buildings, the architecture that Alton has, is just utilize that, and so many people just love that. And so they come in there, and it's just buildings that have character. And so, just don't find it, like you said, everywhere.
So at family gatherings, is it just all business talk? Or?
Well, let's see. We actually, over Christmas time, so with the 5 sons, 3 of them live locally, and then Stephen, our middle son, did a lot of work for us. He's very, very handy.
Oh, amazing.
Contractor, and did a lot of that for us. So they're in Colorado Springs. So this year at Christmas, everybody was home. So we actually all stayed at Wow on Broadway, and it was the best time. Our only complaint is that they wanted to do it next time for 2 days instead of just 1 day, because it was so much fun. Everybody
Right.
enjoyed being together. There just wasn't enough time for everything.
You know, we kind of had an idea of the concept of what we were doing with the boutique hotel and the event space, but we really never had experienced it. And, you know, once we had the get-together around Christmas, you could actually experience what our guests had experienced. And that's kind of, it becomes a home base. It becomes more of a family feel. It's just one of those things that you don't really know until you experience it. And so it gave us kind of a new insight, or at least more experiential, I should say.
Sure.
So it's kind of an eye-opening thing for me, at least.
If we'd been sitting here 7 years ago, let's say, and I would have told you this is what it's going to look like with Wow Event Center, Wow on Broadway, Germania, Riverbend Axford, what do you think your reaction would have been?
Well, that's a good question. With weddings, it would have been, what? We'd be doing weddings? But
Right.
I know how I look at it is really enjoy it, because you're with people. And actually, one of our sons, our 4th son, made this comment one day. He was there for a wedding. He goes, "This is awesome. You are with people on their happiest day of their life." And so, I mean, it's so true. And so we felt blessed just to be able to be a part of that, because it is a huge day for people. And to be able to just be a part of that, and a small part of just having the venue and being there to help them, just really means a lot to us.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, 7 years ago, if you had said that, we would probably thought,
We probably
well,
would've
there's
laughed.
always that possibility. I mean, because we've been,
Right.
you know, we think along those terms, but for it to have gone to an event center and weddings, I probably would have never thought that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the community is very blessed to have you guys in it. The investment that you've made in it, and the way you serve the community is certainly admirable, and we're glad to have you, and certainly appreciate you coming on Business Over Brew.
Yeah, well,
Well,
thanks for having us.
thanks,
and we are
Nick.
blessed
Appreciate
to be
it.
a part of Alton, and we love it, and can't wait to see other people doing things as well, too. So.
Great.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
guys.
having us.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.